Hello, and welcome to today's webinar, How to Build a Testing and Optimization Culture. My name is Mario Kiriakou, Managing Partner at UK Digital Agency Ratio, and I'll be your presenter for today. We will have a chance for Q&A at the end of today's presentation. If you'd like to ask a question, please use the toolbar on the right-hand side of your screen to input your question, and we'll look to answer it at the end of today's presentation. So straight into today's presentation, a little something about Ratio. Ratio UK Digital Agency. We're also a Sitecore digital partner. We work with clients to help them achieve their digital targets and revenue objectives by leveraging data-driven insight and continuous testing and optimization to build experiences which deliver seamlessly across device and channels. So why should you look to test and optimize? Well, it's a good question. After all, optimization isn't necessarily somewhere where businesses have traditionally invested resources. Unlike perhaps more traditional marketing areas like customer acquisition tactics like paid-for marketing. But ultimately, optimization testing exists to help organizations achieve two combined things, really. One, to identify and build what an optimal digital experience looks like for your customers, and to, over time, to generate increased business value off of the back of those improvements in the customer experience for your clients. In my mind, optimization offers companies a great opportunity. Just to caveat that though, I wouldn't classify it as a quick win. I always believe that optimization is something you should never stop doing. It's something which you do continuously over time. But the opportunity is still there. And the opportunity is simply to generate additional revenue for the organization by delivering a better experience for your customers. And who wouldn't want to do that? If you're looking to launch your own optimization program, you will no doubt have already identified many opportunities that you would like to test against in order to improve the experience. But some of the classic ones include, and bear in mind, there's potentially hundreds of opportunities, but some of the obvious ones when you're looking to, at the ideation phase, to create ideas to test against include testing against your different customer segments to identify the experiences which resonate with those targeted and segmented groups. Looking to improve the return for paid-for marketing by testing variations of the experience at each touch point to increase the ROI from visit to conversion. Running tests to improve retention rates by improving the experience for your easiest customers to acquire. After all, your existing customers are much cheaper to sell to than to acquire a brand new customer from scratch. So what is holding businesses back from launching a robust optimization program on their own? Well, a couple of things really. Do you currently deploy resources and personnel in support of an optimization program? Maybe you do, maybe you don't. But it's not surprising that companies do face several hurdles. A lack of resources always comes up. I mean, if you're unable, for example, to make the business case for either the tools or personnel, perhaps that the value within the business isn't understood. It's not seen as a new customer acquisition channel, so perhaps it's not quite understood amongst the wider business. Perhaps the value is understood, but you're unable to deploy a robust optimization plan because of a poor integration between systems. If you have decided that in order to, you would like to test part of your digital experience for a specific segment, but you require data which is held on another system, then you obviously have a barrier to successfully optimize and run those tests if you're unable to optimize and test against that data held elsewhere. Perhaps you lack the budget to acquire the dedicated personnel or tools for successful rollout. So a question to ask yourselves, do you feel optimization offers a valuable marketing opportunity? I've always felt that optimization is an integral and much misunderstood component of digital. Testing and optimization provide organizations the chance to serve their customers better incrementally over time, to anticipate and their needs and better serve their customers, to match and target the right content to the right segment at the right time. And for any organization, and let's be honest, most organizations are focused on ROI and revenue, it gives you the opportunity to test the experience, to ultimately deploy a better experience focused on increasing conversion and engagement rates, and ultimately driving incremental business value over time. Running any form of test is good. So if you are currently running A/B tests, multivariate tests, that's great, and that is a laudable thing, but it's not enough. To successfully optimize the overall digital experience, you need to build a well thought out approach to identifying what, where, and how you should test. Because a test in isolation, though great, is not enough to sufficiently turn the dial. Rome wasn't built in a day, and neither will one test lead to a vastly improved customer experience. Because it's not about one test or two tests or even 10 tests. It's about a continuous approach to test and optimization. If you ever get asked, if you're ever told by anyone within your business, or you hear from other people saying, this is all great, I totally get it, but I don't feel that it's right for our business. It might work for a different business, perhaps a startup, someone like Amazon, a technology company, but it won't work for what we do. And I would heartily disagree. There might be barriers preventing you from deploying an optimization program, but ultimately, optimization works for any business, because after all, you have your consumers of your own, and all optimization is about trying to build a better experience for your customers in order to help you as a business be more successful. So as organizations, where should you look to optimize? Sometimes it'll be difficult to figure out exactly where you should start from, because there's hundreds of opportunities, but you want to narrow it down, your areas, to the 3 or 4 key areas that you feel you should devote most of your energy. So an obvious place to start is by identifying where you can potentially add value across the digital journey and running focused tests against those areas in order to improve the experience. So some of the common areas include, and bear in mind, this is not a complete and definitive list. You'll no doubtly discover many areas unique to your business and also some universal ones. But some of the obvious areas where when you're looking to figure out the type of tests you should run include running tests against landing pages and follow-up landing pages for paid-for traffic and referring channels like social, in order to improve the experience, perhaps reduce the number of steps it takes for a customer to interact with your brand or complete an action, but ultimately to increase the conversion rate. Look to identify and then improve the experience for your most valuable customers. So identify your most valuable segment of customers and run tests against those in order to increase revenue from that grouping over time. And perhaps look to identify and increase customer satisfaction. By example, looking to reduce, this is a classic one with some sort of e-commerce type brands who are looking to reduce the number of steps, but you might look to reduce the number of steps required for a customer to perform a valuable action. So perhaps if you run a test against 6 steps or 2 steps, you might find your conversion rate increases. Adversely, it might not, but that's the whole point of testing. But testing optimization requires data. It requires insight and data, to identify the type of tests you should run, and also to have the information extracted and being pulled into your optimization and A/B testing tools in order to run those tests. So where do you extract those data inputs? Well, it's not surprising that the obvious areas are look at your analytics. You can look at your psychoanalytics, your Google Analytics, Omniture if you're using Adobe. You look at your analytics to identify or create specific reports for your segments, identify where customers are falling down, where they're converting, and use that in the ideation phase to decide or figure out the type of tests you should be looking at. And we'll run through later on in the presentation how to create that idea framework. Once you start running tests, and perhaps you are already running A/B tests, multivariate tests, for example, you will actually find that your testing is self-fulfilling, that you'll extract enormous amounts of results from your successes, your failures, but from your tests. and they will inform your future tests. So that's an invaluable area of data input for optimization. And there's some of the classic ones around traditional customer research from surveys, user research, looking at heat map analytics to identify how customers are interacting on your site. That can inform the type of tests you do. What testing optimization won't deliver? I mean, it's not the be-all and end-all. It does certain things. It doesn't do certain things. It's good to go into it with an open, with your eyes open as to what you could potentially achieve. What it won't achieve is if you're expecting enormous uplift in conversions from running one or two tests, you're probably unlikely to find that. I know sometimes you might see it in case studies, but the truth is, unless you have a particularly bad experience, starting from a very low level, it's going to be difficult to see 3 or 4, 500% return or increase in conversions based on one or two tests. It will improve incrementally over time. Most likely, what you're looking to do is to discover 1 or 2% improvements from tests. Obviously, compounded over time, that adds up. And what it won't deliver is it won't deliver instant results. So if you have a skeptical team who are expecting the latest optimization tool and all the effort you put into workshops, coming up with ideas to generate results within a week, 2 weeks, even a month, then you might be disappointed because it's about incremental change over time. And when you run tests, it does make you feel good when you have successes which lead to an uplift in conversions. But personally, I always felt that actually your successes are not your greatest successes. Actually, it's your failures which lead to more informed decision making. Because testing and optimization allows you the opportunity to fail, but fail quicker, and to use the, why a particular test failed to inform the next test, and then the test after that. The insights you glean from those, I suppose, test failures is key to optimization because it informs all your future decision making for your next tests in the series. And as I said before, optimization isn't about generating a 400% return within a week. It's about micro incremental changes over time, and that's what's really key. That's what's really important. It's that approach to micro changes, micro improvements over time, which aggregate, and just like compound interest, the results of your test will compound over time. So if you start in month one and at the end of the month you're disappointed with the results, look back at after 12 months or 18 months or 24 months, and I think you'll be surprised by taking a robust approach to testing optimization, how it's moved your experience for your consumers, the feedback you get, the improvement in the data from your analytics, and hopefully you'll begin to see that impact on your key business metrics from lead acquisition to basket checkout to revenue donations, depending on what your business is. So how do we look to ingrain optimization within a culture? Well, it's not surprising that proving the business value is the #1 criteria to ingrain in an optimization approach within a business. Amazon is probably the most famous example of a company with optimization at the heart of what it does. What's the reason? I mean, it's not particularly rocket science. I mean, as an online retailer with famously low margins, their goal is to acquire and retain customers at the lowest cost possible. Continuous optimization of the entire digital experience allows a company like Amazon to keep customers, to acquire customers and keep customers and have them keep coming back over time, and therefore generating that overall customer lifetime value. But ingrained within the business is not just about value, isn't the only thing. It's important to show to skeptics that optimization may not provide instant results, but the value of optimization will compound and add up over time, providing those valuable business results. And also, optimization also allows organizations to mitigate risk. By moving away from a model of, for example, you may have experienced big website redesigns where you move from an old website to a whole new website that you spent a given time period building and having a big reveal to launch only to discover that your conversion rates drop. Well, optimization allows you to move away from that big reveal moment of something like a new website to optimizing your existing site adding changes incrementally and therefore mitigating the risk of moving from one platform to the other. A classic story was a couple of years ago with Marks and Spencer's spending 2 years, £150 million to launch a new website, only to discover that within the first month the conversions to revenue dropped 7%. They went for a completely one experience, a completely new experience with no optimization in between to assess how the experience will resonate with consumers. I mean, ultimately, optimization is there to support creating great experiences for your customers. And great experiences can mean many things to different companies. It could be about wowing customers. It simply could be about allowing customers to interact with your brand seamlessly and to discover the information they want without hassle. But delivering that great experience is at the heart of optimization, because by delivering that experience, you gain the opportunity to increase your conversion rates throughout the customer journey. So how should we look to start an optimization program for ourselves? Well, there isn't necessarily one specific area, but the way we at Ratio work with our clients is to create a testing framework, because as I mentioned before, you may be currently doing tests. You may be A/B testing emails, you may be doing tests on your website, for example. That's great. But the idea behind an optimization program is to take a really structured, focused approach to testing specific segments, specific parts of the customer journey, and that framework allows you to have that structured, robust approach. So there isn't one format for what a testing framework can look like. I mean, on screen I've got an example of one of the ones that we use. But when you're looking to put together your testing framework, and again, it can be created in Excel. You don't need fancy technology or specific tools to create this. It's really a way of documenting the process. But some of the key things you need to include in your testing framework is experiment ideas. If you pull together that your marketing team for the idea phase of the program, perhaps they've looked at customer research, analytics in order to gain insight on the type of experiments you want to do. But ultimately, when you're brainstorming your ideas, you're using the framework to document. So you may have identified, again, the second area, you may look to identify your key customer segments and create an idea to support those segments. So some of the key things is you need to document your ideas. You need to identify the target audience segments that your ideas will be tested against. Like all things in life, you may want to do 100 things, but the best will in the world, it's difficult to do them all in one go. So include priority for your tests. And how do you define the priority? Well, identify the segments which are the most valuable to your business, and therefore you can prioritize those tests as being higher value. Optimization and testing is obviously about measurement, so look to put in supporting KPIs. These could vary from tests to tests, but it's important to include these. And the audience size. If you have a very small segment, a very small audience sample, then it may be difficult to run and gain insight, or run a substantial test and gain the insight from that sample. So figure out the audience size and document it. And obviously, most importantly, have a central place within your framework to measure your results, because it's great running tests, but they're worthless unless you document the output. And again, it doesn't matter whether they're positive or negative, because as I mentioned before, I always feel that the failures of tests actually are just as or not more important than the positive results. Going on from what I just said, targeting does generate results. So if you're looking to try and identify where you should focus your testing efforts, identifying your most valuable customer segments makes sense. So for example, you may, through your own research, data, insight, etc., identify that 10% of your customer base is generating 70% of your revenue, for example. Then it makes sense for that extremely valuable segment to create your experiment ideas against that specific segment, because you're looking to optimize the experience for that user base, because you know, A, they're the most valuable, and B, if you're able to generate improvements, it will be reflected in your bottom line. And with testing optimization, context matters. It's important to compare apples with apples. If you're looking to run a test on, for example, your homepage or your website, that's great. But what's even better actually is to segment the traffic coming to that homepage and run a test for that specific segment and grouping. There's potentially hundreds. I mean, some of the classic examples, you can look to run tests, for example, that homepage on your site based on geography, based on device, based on referring channel, based on spend. Spend goes into your most valuable customers. So if you have a way of identifying customers who have purchased X amount over a 3-month, 6-month, 9-month period, you may look to group those segments and run tests with customers within those defined segments. Talked a lot about testing and optimization, but personalization also plays a part. And I'm not going to go into too much detail on personalization because we've got a webinar next week where we will focus exclusively on personalization and go into a lot more detail. But I always feel that testing and personalization should be combined because it's a great opportunity to deploy personalization with testing, because ultimately what you're looking to do is to deliver a better user digital experience for your end customers. And personalization is a great way of surfacing up relevant content for your different segments and user groups. But with personalization, there's a couple of things to bear in mind before you begin. So it's important to define the segments you wish to target with personalization. It's even more important to identify, do you have the data points to target? If it requires integration with another system, do you have the integration? If not, what does it look like to integrate? For example, you might be looking to integrate a CRM system with your website and then personalize based on information held within that database. And that obviously goes into number 3, have those systems being integrated correctly. I deliberately haven't talked about technology so far because actually an awful lot of what goes into, I feel, a successful optimization program is initially abstracted from the technology. That structured approach, the reason why I had a framework built in Excel is because up to that point, we don't necessarily need the technology. Yes, we need to know we have the data and the insights and the system connected, but a lot of the planning is abstracted from technology. But wanted to go into how you could potentially use the look cycle, incorporate that into your optimization plan. You may be using cycle currently for your A/B testing. You may be using another system like Optimizer or Maximizer, but I'm just going to cover some of the areas of, if you are a cycle user, how you could potentially pull that into your testing program. So if you do have cycle currently, and you have, or maybe you haven't used testing, and you are interested in using the testing features within the platform, where do you start? Where do you go about? Well, there's a couple of things. If you're using cycle version 8 and newer, if you're using an older version, you access it slightly differently. But if you're using version 8 and newer, when you're editing from the front end, that's either called the experience editor on the latest version or page editor on the old version of cycle, there's an option called the Optimisation tab. And it's a really cool feature. It allows you to create tests within a specific page, to launch personalized rules to specific segments. It allows you to obviously identify some of the active tests you have running. It allows you to view suggested tests that have been pulled from the insight generated from the analytics within Cycle's experience analytics machine. It allows you to attribute goals to pages or to videos or to specific aspects of your page, like forms. And then you can run tests against those goals. Obviously, the second part of using Cycle's own tools for successful optimization and testing is the actual testing tool itself. Cycle calls it experience optimization. If you're on an older version of Cycle, it may have a slightly different name, but on version 8, this is what it's currently called. And if you ever used a testing tool before, then it's not going to be, you'll be quite comfortable with it. So it allows you to create some tests. We want to run through an example later on, but it allows you to create new tests. It allows you to identify segments you'd like those tests to be run against. Obviously, it allows you to view the results of those tests, most importantly. And it allows you to define the success criteria, whether that's conversions or goals, etc. It allows you to define what a successful or failed test can look like. So I'm going to walk through an example how you could create a page test within Cycle, and this is quite a simple one. I'm not going to go through a multivariate test today, but you can actually create multivariate tests within Cycle. But we're going to look for a more simple A/B version. So if you are looking to go away today, and I hope you are, and if you are using Cycle to go away and run a test, go into your Cycle platform. You look to simply go to the your dashboard of your tool and look to select the Experience Optimization tool. As I mentioned before, Experience Optimization is what Cycle basically calls its testing engine, its testing tool. And if you're looking to run your own test today, you may want to look at just to run it as an example to see how it works. You can create that initial page test. That's great. That starts the process. And with an A/B test, you may be looking to, for example, test a home page. It allows you to identify within your tree the page that you would like to test. And obviously, with any sort of A/B test, you need to test it against another page. So Cycle is quite flexible, gives you a couple of options. It allows you to use an existing page. Perhaps you have a new page that's not converting as well, and you want to run the test against a previous version to compare what the old version was like in terms of conversion rates compared to the new. And if you don't have a page, it gives you the opportunity to create a new page from scratch. And if you're familiar with editing within Cycle, it will just open up a variation of the existing page, and you can go in as normal, make your edits to the page, and then you can deploy your test. And really importantly, you can go in, define your test criteria. For example, expected percentage of traffic you would like this to be exposed to. I've got an example of 100%. You're probably not going to do that. You may look to expose your test to 5% or 10% of your traffic based on your, I suppose, your sample size of how much traffic you get for that specific area of your mobile site or website. You can define the test objective, whether that's conversion rates to a form or goals triggered. At that point, you could go through a list and define your test objective. Obviously, importantly, you can set the test duration. This is something where there is no hard and fast rule. You may have a campaign you're looking to launch within 14 days, and therefore you want to test a new page now. So you may set yourself, a 12-day time period. And then it's very simple, and you can just look to start the test. And at the end of the 14 days or 30 days or 100 days, you can go back into the platform, back into the Experience Optimization tool, and look at the results generated to figure out whether against your initial defined success criteria, what the results were. Were they plus, were they minus? But that brings us to the end of today's presentation. We do have time for Q&A. So I'm just going to quick check to see what questions have come in. If you would like to ask a question, feel free to put your questions into the toolbar on the right-hand side, and we'll answer them now. Okay, we have a question come in from David. Why should we use Cycle testing over a dedicated tool? And it's a good question. Obviously, dedicated tools have their benefits, like everything. There's no right or wrong way of choosing a tool. It's just all dependent on your requirements. But with Cycle, it's a couple of things. One, it's integrated natively into its own personalization engine, so you don't have to use a third-party tool. The data is held within a single repository, and I suppose quite importantly, if you're comparing it with another tool, if you've already purchased a license, you don't require any sort of additional fee to use the tool. I mean, they're at your disposal, so there's no additional monthly cost for running personalization rules or running A/B tests. Okay, that's the last of our questions for today. Just to let you know that we do have another webinar next week. We'll be focusing on personalizing the customer journey, a step-by-step guide, and that's next Wednesday on the 14th of September. Just leaves me to say thank you very much for attending today's webinar, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.